Welcome to January's Leetcode challenge. Today's problem is next permutation. Implement next permutation, which rearranges numbers into the lexicographically next greater permutation of numbers. If such an arrangement is not possible, it must rearrange to the lowest possible order. If we had to say we had a number like this, 1, 2, 3, if we rearranged this, what would be the next number here? Well, we know intuitively that would be 1, 3, 2. After that, it'd be, 2, 1, 3, and then 2, 3, 2. So on and so forth. Now, if it's already the maximum, 3, 2, 1, this is already the max, then we want to loop back to the beginning and say this is the lowest one, return that. So key insight number one, if we had numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if it's all sorted, that's going to be the minimum number. In the same way, if we reverse sorted it and it was like this, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, this is the maximum number, and we can't increase it any more than this. You can think of these as like a permutation of numbers, and this is the maximum one. There's no other ordering that we can do that's going to be greater than this. Now, if we had some numbers in before it, like 1, 3, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we know that this is the max, right? So here's the algorithm. What we do is first try to find on the very rightmost side the longest increasing, or I should say decreasing sequence. So here, this is the longest decreasing sequence, right? It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 3 comes, so now we're going under, so this would be the point at which we pivot. So we know intuitively this is already maximized. The next number that should come should change right here, right? So what should this number be? What we can do is check from the very most right, the first number that's greater than this 3 right here. So we see that it'd be 1, 2, 3, this is the same, so we don't want to swap those, but 4 is greater, right? So what we'll do is swap these two. Now we know that this is like the next, let's say, level of numbers. Now we want to minimize this. So if we sorted this part to 1, 2, 3, 3, 5, this would be the next lexicographical number or next lexicographical permutation. And that's it. That's the entire algorithm. In fact, you don't even need to sort this because this part's already maximized. We can just reverse it, and that would actually be the same thing. Okay, so let's go with that approach and see what we can do here. There's different ways to do it, but I'd like to just do this straightforward. What I'm going to first start is initializing the n with the length of nums. And first thing we want to do is find the pivot, okay? In fact, let's write out everything that we want to do here. We're going to find the pivot. Then we're going to find the first number in our subsequence. I'm going to call that swap. Then find the swap, which is the first number greater than pivot. After that, we actually do the swap, and then we will reverse from the pivot point all the way to the end. And that should give us our next lexicographical number. So let's first find our pivot here. What we'll do is just go from the end of the array and move backwards. So for I in, let's say, range of n minus 1 all the way to minus 1, minus 1. But one thing to note, the way I'm writing this, I'm not going to actually check the last pivot number. I'm going to go to 0. And the reason for that is what I'm going to do is say, all right, look, if nums I minus 1 is less than nums I, that means it's no longer decreasing, right? So what we'll do there is set our pivot to I, and then we'll just break our loop. Otherwise, if we are able to go through this whole thing and we find that nothing no previous number was less than the number next to it, well then this is already maximized, right? So what we'll do is say, look, if pivot is equal to 0, then just sort this number and return. And that would be it. And I should set our pivot number here. I'll set it to 0 right up there. Right, so now we find our pivot, and then we want to find our swap number, which would be the first number that's greater than, not the pivot, right? Because if we had 3, 2, 1, and like 2 here, right now this is pinpointing the pivot, but what we want to check is the position previous to the pivot number. What's the first number in here in order that's greater? And that would be here at 3, but yeah, let's first do that. So what we'll do is say, first set my swap to the end, which would be n minus 1, and while nums pivot minus 1 is, while this is, I guess greater or equal to num's swap, we'll decrease our swap by 1 until we find one that's not greater. Until we find the one where the number next to the pivot is not greater than the swap number. That should be our swap. So now we're going to do that swap here. We'll just say num swap, num's pivot minus 1. And we will swap the two to num's pivot, num's swap. Now once we do that, now all we need to do is reverse or sort the numbers from our pivot point onward. So the way I'll do that, you could write a function to do that, but I'm just going to cheat and say, all right, look, pivot, from the pivot point on, I want to sort it. So we'll just say sorted, num's pivot on. So I'm going to first see if this works. Looks like that's working, but let's test some other ones just in case. Let's say we had like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I don't know, 1, 3, let's say. Will this work? Should be like 1, 4 something. And it didn't work. Oh, what did I do wrong here? While num's pivot is greater, isn't that right? So I'm going to cheat here and just see what my swap number is. I may have messed something up. It should be 1. Oh. I don't understand. I don't know why this isn't printing swap. Oh, okay, that's, I don't know why I did that. It's not return. Obviously we want to break the loop, not return. So I just love it when you do silly things like that. Okay, looks like that's working. Let's go ahead and get rid of a print, and let's go ahead and submit this. And there we go, accepted. All right, so I know this looks really complicated, but it's really not. Once you get that algorithm in your head, really it's just a matter of trying to implement it. I don't know if this is the best way. There's probably cleaner ways to do it. And you don't actually even need to sort this here. You can do reversed, and this would be the same thing. This would still work. Now, strangely, for some reason, it's sometimes slower in Leetcode, but technically, I know that this should be faster. So, all right, thanks for watching my channel, and remember, do not trust me. I know nothing.